Hello and welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, and working with entrepreneurs around the world. I'm so excited to bring you Nikki Rausch today. So welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am so excited to welcome Nikki Rausch today. Welcome, Nikki.
Hey, Heather. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to this conversation. For those that don't know Nikki was a former Seattleite, or at least in the Seattle area. I was just chatting with her before we went live, and she's now in Boise. But she is CEO of Sales Maven, an organization dedicated to authentic selling. She also has the unique ability to transform the misunderstood process of selling. With 25 plus years of experience selling to such prestigious organizations as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Hewlett Packard, and NASA, Nikki shattered sales records in many industries, receiving multiple top producer awards along the way. Today, entrepreneurs and small business owners from a wide range of disciplines hire Nikki to show them how to sell successfully and authentically without being pushy or salesy. An engaging and sought-after speaker, she shares the secrets of her sales success through illuminating keynote addresses and business-changing workshops. Her robust Sales Maven Society ignites game-changing outcomes for clients. Nikki's 3 popular books are available at Amazon, and her podcast, Sales Maven, can be found on your favorite podcast platform. So, Nikki, I think I was first connected to your work through a local event here in the Seattle area where I got to hear you speak.
Yes, I think that was a Business Among Moms event many, many years ago.
Many years ago through our mutual friend, Julie Fry, who's also
Yes,
been on the podcast. And Julie has since moved on and is doing some interesting things. But Nikki, it's so great to reconnect.
it's fun to see you. I get to see you because we're on Zoom, but it is fun to connect with you. I was super excited when this popped up on my schedule.
Yes. Well, after watching you speak, I went and bought your book, and we were chatting about it just before this conversation, the Buying Signals book, which I think you said is your number 2. And so your second book, and you can share the full title of it. What's it called?
It's Buying Signals,
Oh, just
how to recognize the buying signals and act on them. Yeah.
totally. Well, and it's something like 17 buying signals. I read it on an
Yeah.
airplane flight, right? And I
Yeah. It's a
went,
super fast read.
it's a super fast read, which is why I've also given it as gifts to friends, people who I know are not selling in their business the way they should be. And it was like there were so many light bulb moments in that book because I would read it and go, oh, that was a buying signal. Like I totally missed that. The thing I love about that book is it lays out so clearly what people can miss and how we can misinterpret buying signals that people are actually giving us.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole premise. I wrote that book because I was speaking a lot, when you and I first met.
Mm-hmm.
I was speaking a lot in the Seattle area, and the very first time I was ever going to even talk about buying signals, I was really nervous because I thought, everybody knows this. They're going to go like, why is this lady talking about something we all know? But I decided to talk about it. And it was like light bulbs went on in the room with people, and they're like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So for your audience, if you haven't heard anybody talk about buying signals before, it's a verbal or nonverbal cue that somebody gives that indicates interest, and your job is to act on the buying signal in the moment so that you move them through the process and get to the place where you exchange dollars for services. So I ended up writing the book because I was like so surprised at how many people didn't know how to recognize and act on a buying signal. And so I was like, I'm just going to put this into a book. I'm going to put it up on Amazon. People can go buy it. It's like $10, and it will change their business if they can just get clear on these buying signals. So I love that I'm so flattered that you read the book and that you have gifted it. That is the ultimate compliment when somebody gifts one of my books to somebody else. So thank you
Well,
for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. I love books that are actionable and that really give you ways to change something you're doing right now. And that
Yeah.
one, like I said, there were several light bulbs that went off for me where it's like, oh, I remember distinctly the buying signal about some clients basically kind of bartering for price,
Mm-hmm.
right? And often I would misunderstand that one as like, oh, they're just not my client. Like they're not ready to invest in their business yet, right? And so I think that there are ways, and I think sometimes that's true. I think sometimes
Yeah.
people will barter because they are not your right client.
Yes.
But I think some, and I can't remember the way that you made the point, but some people will just ask because they'll feel like maybe they missed an opportunity if they didn't, right?
Yes.
And this,
Yes.
or culturally, it's what they're trained to do or whatever. And I remember being like, oh, I shouldn't, just necessarily exclude people who want to have that conversation because I'm misinterpreting them as not, quote unquote, my client, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I often say that somebody asking for a discount or wanting to barter around your price, you know, put the ego aside, don't be offended by it, because for some people, like I grew up in my dad and grandfather owned a tool store, and they traded and bartered all the time. So that was very much a part of my family history. So I wasn't really offended when people would want to barter with me, but at the same time, it is absolutely okay to say to somebody who asks you for a discount, I don't offer discounts on my services, but I'd love to still earn your business. Is that something you'd like to do together? And
Yes.
most of the time, people will go like, yes. But if you don't do that, if you don't act on it, if you don't treat it like it's a buying signal, they'll walk away feeling unsatisfied with their interaction with you because now they feel like,
Mm,
oh, I've offended her in some way, or, oh, she doesn't even want my business, whatever that is. And then you walk away having lost out on working with a great client who very well may pay your full price. But if they don't ask, they feel like, did I miss an opportunity to get a good deal? And we, in our society today, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think I probably got like 30 emails today of things that were on sale, from places that I
mm,
shop or whatever. And so it's very common in our society for things to be on sale, for there to be a deal. And so it's okay. Don't be offended when somebody asks, just get curious and then invite them, comment on it, either say yes or no. I always
mhm.
say in sales, only offer a discount if you get something in return. Like there has to be this balance of power in the relationship. So just offering somebody a discount because they ask isn't in your best interest. It's okay if you want to give them a discount, but get something in return so that they value what it is that they just got from you.
I love that point, not only about getting something in return, but your response to that question reminded me that one of my favorite parts of the book was the clarity with which you model how to make the ask, right? Responding clearly and then turning right back around and inviting them to do business with you. And I think that really stumps a lot of people, getting to the point of really clearly making the ask. Um, Talk to us, for those that don't know you, take us back to your start in sales, right? Not everybody loves sales or loves learning sales or chooses a career in sales, right?
Yeah,
And
that's so true.
it's so true. And yet, as entrepreneurs, we all end up, I mean, at least in some way, needing to learn sales. How did you start down that path?
Well, again, I mentioned I grew up in a tool store, so I
Hmm.
was doing a little bit of selling. I worked the cash register often as a way to make money. And when I first moved to Washington, which was back in 93, one of my first jobs that I got was working at this kiosk in the mall during the holiday season. So it was like a temporary job, but they had a commission component to there. So you could work and I got paid minimum wage. But if I sold a certain amount during my block of time that I was working, then it would start to elevate my pay. So oftentimes I was making double what my normal pay would be, sometimes even more. And then I ended up getting a job during a college project working for a technology company in sales. And that's really where my career was born. And I
Mm,
found that I actually, not that people would necessarily know this, but I'm kind of shy just by nature. I'm not extroverted by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm not pushy or aggressive. That's just not my style. So I went to work in this technology field, really around a lot of very aggressive salespeople that were having a lot of success, and I had to figure out what was my way? How was I
Mm.
going to be successful and do it in a way that still felt good? Because I think one of the things that scares most people in sales is we've all seen it done by somebody who's super aggressive, who kind of comes across pushy, and maybe we don't even enjoy the experience with them. Like, we don't want to be like that. And so one of the things I learned, I also started studying a few years later neuro-linguistic programming. And that was really a big game changer for me, because I realized that by using what I was learning in my NLP classes, and if that's a new term as a listener, it's really the study of communication. So if I could apply my NLP background and my sales background of really making the relationship a priority and making the foundation of everything I do built around rapport, then sales got so much easier for me. And then that's why now I teach this 5-step process to the sales conversation. I call it the selling staircase. And I teach people step by step by step what to say, what to do, not in a script, like, not like you sound like a robot, but know where you are in the conversation and how do you move to the next step with people. And sales gets so much easier when you make it about the conversation, about the other person, and you're not focused on, oh, what are they thinking about me? Am I being pushy? Am I being not enough? Should I be more aggressive? Like, you don't need to worry about any of that stuff when you really start to focus on, where am I in the process? Where am I in the conversation? And what do I do next?
The part that I love about what you just said is, one, this idea of kind of having an overall map, knowing, because I think people can really get lost in the details and in the conversation itself, and trying to decipher emotions and signals and figuring out where they're at. And so keeping in mind that bigger picture, framework, but also this idea that salespeople, like, you have to be aggressive, or you have to be an extrovert, or you have to, it's so refreshing to know. And I'm sure people that are listening that don't count themselves in those categories, either as aggressive or extroverted or super outgoing or verbal, right? That there's still a way for them to learn sales, do it well, do it in a way that fits and that will work. I mean, and I think I'd be curious your perspective being inside the sales industry, because what I find living inside of the legal industry is there are certain perceptions about an industry sometimes that, well, certainly a percentage of people in that industry, have helped to create that perception, can, when you look at the vast majority of people in the profession, that perception is actually not true. Do you find that the sales industry is largely made up of people who you would call aggressive, or is that something that, like auto mechanics or lawyers or any of the, industries where there are some bad apples which have earned a bad name, is that true for sales as well?
Yes, I think that is true, that there's always going to be a percentage of people, but I'll tell you what I have found more and more, and I have worked with thousands of sales reps in my career. I've worked with, I've trained now thousands of people how to sell successfully, but I have also in my career worked and supported probably hundreds or even thousands there of different types of salespeople.
Mm.
And usually the people that come off as aggressive, as pushy, normally it's because they've been trained by somebody else that this is how you do it. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to them, and it doesn't feel good to you, but they're doing it because somebody is pushing them and going, this is how you sell, go out and hunt the big game, and, bring in the, you're an elephant killer or whatever they call people. I hate that stuff in sales. But what I find is that, and this is why I teach this 5-step process to sales, is that it allows for your own personality to show up, because there are people who you probably have bought from before that might be considered a little bit pushy or aggressive, but they're super charming and the experience felt really good. And I find that those people are being authentic to themselves. Like they very much are an extrovert. They very much will kind of push you a little bit on something that you say or do or challenge you in some way, but it's usually very authentic to their personality. And so oftentimes you'll go like, I kind of like this person. Like they feel like you feel like what you see is what you get. So you want to show up from this place of being authentic. And I, I work with people that are like that and all this spectrum all the way to another. I had a client a few years ago who refused to turn her camera on during our coaching sessions because she absolutely did not want to be seen. And, and so what we did is we found ways for her to be authentic and show up successfully in her sales conversations that felt good to her and that she could still continue to prosper and grow her business. And it's like understanding what's the process, where am I in the conversation, what do I need to do to move somebody to the next step. And so, she used to describe herself as super awkward. And I was like, great, let's find a way to make what you consider awkward, charming, and effective.
Right. Well, and I do love what you say about some people can get away with being pushy because maybe that's who they are in their personality day to day, is they're just bold and they'll push people a bit. But because it's authentic, it works and it's not overly offensive even to the consumer, right? And whereas other people can do it very gently, like my sister is actually dating somebody who, they're both in sales and they're both phenomenal. And I don't see him as like an aggressive, pushy, like he's a relationship builder guy and he's phenomenal, right? And so I love that you're breaking apart this stereotype or whatever myth that you have to be aggressive, that you have to be totally extroverted, because it's just not true. And I think it really has a lot more to do with how you're showing up and whether you're being yourself and doing that in the context of having a process, having, a formula or a process that you've created that works for your business. So share with us, how do you help people build this 5-step process that you talk about? Is it the same for every business? Is it formulated a little bit differently depending on the business?
Yeah. So I really focus on the sales conversation because I find that there's a lot of people out there that teach sales and oftentimes they say they're teaching sales, but a lot of times what they're teaching is marketing, and they teach like, how do you bring leads in the door, which frankly is marketing. You'll never convince me of it otherwise. Like that's marketing. Now your job is, how do I take that lead and convert it to a sale? How do I turn that lead into earned dollars? So this is why I teach people the sales conversation, because once you've got the lead in there, people will often say like, fill your sales funnel, but a lot of your sales funnel again is marketing activities. So once the lead's in the door, what do you do and say next? So the 5 steps in the process is, step 1 is the introduction. And the idea there is to make a powerful first impression. And I have deeper dive trainings. And actually my 3rd book is called The Selling Staircase, where I dive into this as well. So there's the power of the first impression. So make a strong introduction. Once you do that, it's very easy to move to step 2 in the process, which is create curiosity. And creating curiosity, by the way, is the most missed step in the sales process. So if you can learn how to create curiosity, if you can allow somebody to go like, ooh, Heather, tell me more about that, or I have some questions for you. Well, now it's super easy to move somebody to step 3, which is the discovery. Some people call this like the consultation call. Some people would call it like an intake form. And what are the questions that you're asking in that discovery process? Because all questions during the discovery should lead to hiring you. And this is where I break this down for people. We figure out what are the right questions that they're asking. Oftentimes they're asking a lot of questions that they only need the answers to once somebody hires them. That's a mistake. So let's make sure we're asking the right questions that lead people down this next path, which leads you to step 4, which is the proposal. And when I say proposal, that doesn't necessarily mean like a formal written proposal that you send to somebody as a beautiful document. It could, depending on your business, but oftentimes it's just How do I lay out what are the next steps? How to work with me, how to pay me money so that you can get your need met, right? So that's step 4. And then step 5 is the close. And this is the second most missed step in the selling process. Oftentimes, people get to the proposal and they think they're done. They think, okay, so here's the way we can work together. Let me know what you decide. No, you've got to issue close language. And so there's very specific language that you use, and there's a specific process that makes sure that you get to that place where you can put a question in front of them, which is essentially, now it's going to be more finesse than this, but it's essentially is, would you like to buy? Yes or no?
Yeah. Well, and the pieces I can absolutely see. So you mentioned step 2, the creating curiosity, and step 5, the close, being the biggest misses. Are people doing something there instead, or are they just leaving those steps out?
Oftentimes what they're doing is they're skipping steps. So it's kind of like, the comparison I often give is like, imagine that you're going to stop at the grocery store to pick up some milk on your way home from somewhere. And as you're walking into the grocery store, somebody jumps out in front of you and says like, would you like to buy my whatever it is? And maybe they kind of surprise you a little bit and you're like, what is this? What are you selling? And you're kind of confused and you're thinking, I'm just here to get milk. Like, why are you accosting me at the grocery store? So this is what it feels like to many people because somebody somewhere told them like, go in for the hard sell, like close that deal. And so they skip all these steps. And then people are going like, what? Like, who are you? Why are you selling? What are you asking? I'm confused. So when you skip steps, you often leave people feeling confused, frustrated, and frankly, sometimes angry. Like, we're like, how dare you accost me? So like, or you don't know me, or why are you selling to me? Like, where did this even come from? So it's super important that as the seller, I often will say, you don't get to skip steps in the process. Now, a prospect can show up, and reach out to you and be like, Heather, I've been listening to your podcast. I really need you in my life and in my business. So how do I work with you? I don't want you to say to them like, oh, slow down. We got to go back to step 1. I want you to say, let me ask you a couple quick questions. Here's how we can work together. Would you like to do that? Like, I want you to go step 3, 4, and 5. Like, you can, if they want to skip the step, they can go with them, but you don't get to skip steps in the process. So oftentimes people go from step 1 to step 5 and try to skip everything in between. And it's really an uncomfortable experience for the client because they don't know what to do and they don't know why it's happening this way. And some people will be nice to you and will nicely just start ghosting you or just start going away. And if you're not sure why people are ghosting you or not returning your calls, not returning your emails, 9 out of 10 times it's because you skipped some steps.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've all at probably different parts of life, whether it's like as a consumer out in the world, whether it's like in our business attending an event, right? We've had the experience of being sold to in a way that is uncomfortable and does set up some irritation or aggravation. Why is it so hard? Like going back to point 2, step 2 around creating curiosity. And I assume this is partly about inviting somebody in, right? Letting them know in some interesting way that this could apply to them. Why do people skip that? Why is that a hard thing for people to accomplish, the creating curiosity part?
Well, I don't think there are a lot of people who teach it, frankly.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a commented on part of the sales process often enough. I actually don't know anybody else that talks about creating curiosity in the selling process, like as a formalized training. Now, they might teach you some ways to do it, but they're not commenting on it to make it really obvious. And because they don't comment on it and make it really obvious, it's not obvious to somebody who doesn't know how to sell already. Yeah. So learning how to create curiosity, one of the ways to do it is by asking questions and by answering questions that people have that make them go like, what does that mean? Or tell me more about
Mm.
that. Or like, I wonder if that's something I could benefit from. When you get those types of responses, which by the way are all buying signals, then it's
Mm.
really easy to invite the person to the next possible step in the process, which oftentimes, like for me in my process, it's getting on a discovery call. It's talking about ways we might work together. It's, it gives me an opportunity to find out more about them and their business. But just showing up and doing this hard sell, or the other mistake is that people think like, oh, I'm just going to do the shotgun approach to sales. I'm going to put, I'm just going to sell to everybody who I've ever met
Mm.
through LinkedIn, through, whatever social media platform. I'm going to blast everybody the same message. And then they go, nobody wants to buy from me. Well, that's because you skipped all the steps and you didn't have permission, frankly, to sell to them. And I personally don't think you should sell to somebody without their permission. Like if you get to the place where you're laying out ways to work with you, you should have asked permission to do that. So
Mm.
for me in the selling process, when I'm talking to a prospective client, and I can clearly see, oh my gosh, I could totally help this person. I'd feel really good about having them as a client. I know I can make an impact in their business. I don't say to them, oh, you need to hire me. I ask and say, based on what you've shared, I do have some ideas of ways that we could work together. Would you be interested in hearing more about that? And if they say yes, then I have permission to now talk about ways we can work together. But just showing up and going like, I have people say this to me all the time, like, Nikki, I just, I go look at people's website and then I just send them messages. Then I tell them, like, your website doesn't do this well. And you obviously need help with that. And I'm like, how offensive. They must be super offended. There's a reason you're calling me now needing some help with sales, because what you're doing is skipping steps. You don't have permission to even comment on their website yet. Let's get permission. Let's build relationships and see what happens, because sales gets a lot easier and your time and energy and dollars, frankly, are used in a much more efficient way.
That permission piece is huge. I feel like you're right. So many people skip that step. I actually, originating from the same group, got invited that you and I met, got invited to somebody said like a coffee chat, but it was over Zoom. It was like meet and connect. Literally 10 seconds into, I didn't even know who this person was, what they were about, like nothing. And she didn't know me either. She's like, oh, can you go to this URL and pull up this video? And it was like all about her company. And it was some, I'm sure, marketing, sales video. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I thought this was like literally, let's connect and learn about each other. Like I didn't sign up for this. I was really
Right.
clear and I just got off the call. But part of me inside was like, wow, does this work for her? Like I cannot imagine this actually working. And how many people are out there skipping that step and not getting permission to actually have the next step of the conversation?
Yeah, this whole, I call that like bait and switch selling. Like
Oh,
knock off the bait and switch selling. Don't tell somebody you want to have a coffee chat to get to know them, only to go on and pitch, pitch, pitch. You
it,
should never pitch without permission, frankly. If you're pitching without permission, I can guarantee you, you are annoying. Probably 9.9 out of 10 people are super annoyed at you and feel like this is why I hate salespeople. It's like, yeah, because somebody didn't teach this person, or frankly, this person never took the time to invest to
yeah.
learn how to do it in a way that feels good. Because on that same coffee chat, had she created some curiosity and had you asking questions about her business, then it may have led to, let me tell you a little bit about, which by the way, I don't care what you sell or what you do. If you're on a live call with somebody, whether it's Zoom, or in person or on the phone with somebody, don't ever send somebody to watch a video while on a call with you. That is the worst sales approach. And companies that are out there teaching that, it makes me angry and it makes me nauseous for their salespeople. That is such a missed opportunity for connection and rapport than to tell somebody to go look at a URL and watch a video. Like, oh, no, never.
Yes.
Absolutely not.
it was so painful. And I just remember thinking like, wait, is somebody teaching her to do this? Like, is this literally their system, or is she
Yep.
just like trying it because she doesn't know how to sell? Right? It's,
No, there's companies out there that teach this, like get them
oh,
to watch the video. It's like, well, first of all, here's another thing I say often. Sales is not something you do to somebody. It's something you do with.
mm,
And when you start treating people like this is a collaborative conversation approach to sales, your job
mm.
is never to convince anybody to buy from you. Your job is to understand what's their need, what's their want, what's their desire. Do you have a solution for them? And do you have permission to put that solution in front of them?
Right. I mean, this is acting like you care about the relationship, not the sale, right? You're actually
Yeah.
spending time getting to know somebody. And so I can't imagine anything other than relationship based sell. Like I just can't imagine anything else working because at least in my experience, if I don't feel like somebody actually cares about me or wants to know about me or support a unique need that I have, in a way that they can resolve it, I'm like, I don't really want to know anything further about what they're doing. Right? If
None
I'm
of
a,
us
if I'm
want,
a
yeah.
consumer, if I'm looking
Yes.
for a solution to my problem.
Yes. None of us want to be treated like a wallet. And
Yeah.
like if you treat people like you're just a big wallet and I'm just trying to pull some money out of you, like that feels
Mhm.
gross. It feels icky. It turns people off. And realistically, we love to work with people who we feel are invested in some way in us having something that makes our life or our business better,
Mhm.
right? Like, I don't want to give my money to people who treat me like a wallet, don't care at all about making sure that their product or their service delivers and meets my need.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what is the point? You're just wasting. If you have a product that's a consumable that you can just put up on a website and you can optimize your SEO and, you can drive people to the website and they're just going to buy all day long from you, then you don't have to have great customer service. You have to have a product, frankly, to do that. Most of the people I work with are service based. I do have a few clients that are product based, but they're having real conversations with
Mhm.
people. Like, I'm not an expert on how to optimize your website for SEO. Like, there's great people out there. That's not me. But most of the people who are building businesses today have some type of a service. They're doing something based on their expertise and sharing their expertise like you, right? In some way. So you absolutely have to learn how to sell and do it in a way that makes the relationship the priority. And people will love you for it.
Yeah. Well, and this concept of sales being something that you do with somebody versus to them. Talk to us briefly because I think social media, it's really easy for people to talk at other people,
Yeah.
not talk with them. What do you like when it comes to social media? What do you train your clients on? Like, how do you get them to change their mindset or do it the right way versus this talking at that I think happens so frequently?
Yeah. One of the easiest ways to switch from talking at to talking with is to ask questions. Questions
Mm,
start conversation. And if you want to share something, so for instance, here's just one example. Like, let's say you want to share something really exciting or some new offer that you have in your business. Like, you could post it on social media and you might get a little bit of conversation around it. But what would happen if you start with a question? For instance, what if you said to somebody like, what's the most exciting thing that happened to you this week? Here's what's been exciting in my business. And you can then talk about the offer. And then what happens is oftentimes people will, go like, oh, that's so interesting about your offer, because they'll pay attention to the offer, or they'll actually go, here's something that happened for me. And now we're actually having some conversation and I can, pour some love on them and go like, hey, that's so awesome. Great job. How can I support you further? Again, asking a question versus just talking at people all the time. We're so bombarded with being talked at, and
yes.
we just start to tune it out, right? It's like, oh, here's
Yes.
another person talking at me. Start talking with, and you can do it by asking questions.
Well, I love that approach to really treating everything that you do in your business that's client facing like a conversation, like an exchange. Even this podcast, for example. One of the things that I love, love, love to do is talk about business and have a conversation with somebody about all kinds of things related to business. But I have noticed that there are people that treat a podcast like a stage, not like a conversation when it's an interview based podcast, right? And for
Yeah.
me, it's like I want people to feel like they're sitting there having this conversation with us. It's, at a dinner table, like much more of a conversation than it is a presentation, or again, this whole thing of talking at somebody. That's what you do when you're on a stage. I mean, and if you do it well, it can be more of a conversation, right? But I think you get my point. Like
Yeah.
you're not presenting and talking at somebody. And when you can avoid that and make it a conversation, like people want to know more. They want to get to know you. They want to understand how, they might work with you if it's something that's going to be a fit for them.
Right. Right.
Now, talk to us, because you walked us through the 5 steps, right, of having an effective sales process. Talk to us about why it's important to have a high-end offer.
Well, one of the reasons it's important to have a high-end offer is because oftentimes people want a what's next, or they want to start with usually your high-end offer is that private one-on-one time with you. And there are a lot of people out there who are like, I'm not interested in group stuff, or I'm not interested in an online training course. I want to engage with you. So by having a high-end offer, they get, usually it's that they get the most amount of one-on-one tailored approach time. So my one-on-one clients, they get the most access to me, and every answer that I give is specific to their business. And so that's a way to amplify their success. They get results really fast. And I get paid a premium to do that. Now, I'm totally a fan of, I have multiple ways that people can work with me. I do have a group membership program that's phenomenal, and people get great results in there, but they have to do the work. They have to okay, I just took this training from Nikki, and now I have to figure out how to apply this to my business, right? Whereas my private clients are like, yeah, that training was great, Nikki, and this is what I'm thinking, but how do I apply this to my business? And then I'm giving very specific answers. So having a high-end offer, it also is a really great way to make a big difference to your revenue, to your bottom line each month, by having an opportunity. And the other kind of piece to this is that you also need to promote it on a regular basis. Don't assume that people are going to go to your website and figure it out. Make sure you're promoting on a regular basis the different types of ways that people can work with you, so they understand it's not just a one and done offer, that there are multiple ways that they can come into your business and work with you. And a high-end offer, again, you attract premium clients who want exceptional results.
Well, I love that piece, especially about exceptional results. But I find that so many, in the space that I serve, right, we're talking coaches, consultants, online experts, and educators, speakers, authors. But I think so many people are enamored by the group program, right? Sorry, that was a random call. Doing less from a time standpoint, right? Serving more clients, the one-to-many model, which I think is fabulous. But I agree with you that if you care about results, and especially for clients that are, I'm just going to call them like catalyst type of clients, like they want to move. They don't want to wait 8 weeks or 10 weeks to begin to experience the transformation that you're going to deliver in a group program, right? That people can really miss out if they're not talking about. And I love the reminder of having to, educate people about exactly how it is that they can work with you. Because I think a lot of people do that poorly and don't get it out there enough, and don't remind people the ways that people can work with them directly.
Yeah, for sure. And, making sure that people know. The other thing is that by having options of ways to work with you, it also gives people's brain to go like, do I want this or that? But if your answer is you've got one option, then your options then are yes or no. But if you have different ways that people can come in and work in your business with you, now it's not a yes or no. It's like choice A, B, C, or no. right? And
Yes.
now it's like options feel really good to people.
I love that reminder about options, because I think people can oversimplify. And you're right that if it's like one primary program or core offering that you have, and that's all you're making, like that's the only offer you're making to that client, it's yes or no, but it's like this or the marketplace, right? They're more likely to compare what you're doing here in this program versus somebody else's program or somebody
Yes.
else's offer. Like, let's go, compare what I get here and what I get here versus the flexibility of saying, these are the ways that you can work with me. I love that reminder.
Yeah.
How can you increase your influence when you're engaged in these client conversations, right? These one-on-one conversations. How do you increase your influence in those conversations?
One of the ways to increase influence is to what I call plant seeds. So that's really kind of back to creating some curiosity and tell stories. Use examples.
Mm,
You can tell a story very easily and quickly, by the way. So, for what you just said about like, oh, having, options, and that's a good reminder versus them having to go, pick this other. Like, I could tell a story right now. I could go, this just happened to a client recently where she had one offer when we started working together. By the end of our VIP day, she then had 3 really easy ways for people to work with her. And within 1 hour of getting off of our VIP day, she
mm,
closed one of the brand new offers. And it was because, okay, now she had a little bit more freedom and flexibility, right? So you tell a little story
mm,
that makes people go like, ooh, I wonder what my offers should be. Or, oh, I wonder if I should go work with Nikki because I want to talk
mm,
to her about, like, I think I only have 2 offers and maybe I need a third. Or, I'm not sure if my pricing is right, right? Like, whatever that story. So you plant a seed or you tell a story to give an example, bring it to life, because storytelling is the language of the brain. Like, there's
mm.
tons of data out there about this, that our brains love stories, and we get lost in a story. We tend to find ourselves, like we put ourselves in somebody else's story and we go, how does that story relate to me? So being able to use story as a way to build influence allows people to go, oh my gosh, I just heard Heather tell this story. And now I'm thinking about, gosh, this applies to me in this way, or that doesn't really apply to me because of this and this, but I wonder if this other thing would apply, right? Like, that's how our
Mm,
brains work. We love to associate. And so by telling stories, this is the way we do
mm.
it for people.
That's, yeah. I love the topic of influence, which is why I like this question about how you increase your influence in these conversations. And I think part of it, the storytelling piece, I love as well, because I agree, our brains either connect with or don't connect with a story that's being told. And the thing that I love about influence is if you're truly influential, you're influencing their actions beyond that conversation, right? So they're either still thinking about that story, still thinking about your business. Maybe they're talking about it with a friend or mentioning it to somebody else because it was memorable. And if you don't
Yes.
have stories, or you don't have a powerful way of delivering those golden nuggets, whatever it is that is in your field of expertise, it's not going to be memorable. People are not going to be thinking about it later or still talking about it. So I love that storytelling piece. What do you find tends to be most challenging when people really put their focus on learning sales and doing this well, including your 5-step process? What do they still struggle with? What tends to be the most challenging part of either changing past behavior or changing their thought process around, like, really adopting an open, willingness to do sales the right way?
I mean, I think you kind of just answered the question. It's a mindset thing.
Is it?
Mindset is always kind of that
Mhm.
number one thing. So oftentimes I spend a lot of time with clients recognizing, like, I'm always looking for, oh, is there a limiting belief in how they just framed that question to me? Or is there a limiting belief in what they're saying? And can I create some type of a reframe to do what I call give it a little bit of like wiggle room,
Mhm.
like, so I can help them become open to believing something else that's going to make a bigger impact in their business. Like one of the biggest limiting beliefs, and I hear this over and over and over again with clients. And as a matter of fact, I just had a conversation with a client this morning. One of her limiting beliefs is that she could not take payment on a first call with somebody. Like there had to be a proposal that got sent out, a scope of work, and then she could collect payment. So that was a limiting belief, and I identified it very quickly. And today, during our coaching session, she's like, I just want you to know, Nikki, that this morning before I got on a call with you, it's the first time I've ever asked somebody, like, would you like to go ahead and pay for that now? And guess what? They did. I'm like, yeah. And I hear that all the time from clients. So it's a mindset thing. And again, it's just figuring out what are those things that are getting in their way? Where do they have some blind spots? And then my job as the coach is to guide them to look and show them and give them some language of, okay, if you're willing to try this, see what happens. And oftentimes when my clients are willing to try to ask for money on that first call, they're like, somebody just paid me. I have a client who still messages me all the time. She's like, Nikki, somebody just paid me $5,000 and we only talked for 10 minutes and they're so excited to work with me. Before she was always like, I'm just going to hire somebody who calls them and collects the payment after we talk. And I was like, no, we're going to fix this.
Oh my gosh. How many people probably can relate to that though? Like, I want somebody else to do sales or handle payment or have the money conversation. Yes. I think that's probably really frequent. Yeah. But what a great example you just shared about how we can literally build how do I word this? Build our processes in our business around limiting beliefs, right? So this woman that was like, oh, I can't take payment on the first call and the process has to look like this, like, right? I want everybody who's listening right now, like, go look at your process and see where limiting beliefs are influencing how you structured that. That's really curious. But I mean, it's so obvious when you think about it, and yet I think we don't often think about it.
And I often, because I get this a lot where people go, oh, I heard you talk about that people can take money. That's not me, Nikki. And here's why. So I will say, if you're listening right now and you're like, oh, that works for other people, that would never work for me. Let's have a conversation, because it's pretty rare that I ever find somebody that I'm like, yeah, you can't take money on the first call. It's so rare. It very rarely happens. So you might be the special snowflake, but you probably aren't. And it is a limiting belief you built into your business.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. So one last question, and then I'm going to get to where people can contact you and, where they find you online. But you've done a lot of speaking, right? You've got lots of experience as a speaker. For those that are listening that are trying to figure out, how do I invite people into the next step from stage? Because I think there can be a disconnect at events where you're talking to, whatever size of audience, but then there's no follow-up. There's no what comes next, or you're not doing it very successfully. Do you have any tips or tricks that you're willing to share on how to do that well, how to book somebody into a call or into a, discovery session or whatever comes next? How do you do that well?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple things fast, just because I know you asked me one question, but I feel like we could do a whole episode around this. So first and foremost, you're going to pre-frame at the beginning that there's a way for people to get more. Even if you are at a speaking gig where they're like, you cannot sell from the front of the stage. Okay, fine. Then give them some way to get something for free from you. They've got to opt in for it. So that's one way, because once they're on your list, you can sell to them, and you absolutely should sell to them. So you're going to pre-frame at the beginning that there's something coming. And during your talk, you're going to share stories and you're going to plant seeds. You're going to create some curiosity. And when you come off stage, there are going to be people who are going to come up to you and want to talk to you. I want you to be on the lookout for the buying signals right then. And I want you to stop what you're doing when you get one and invite somebody to the next step. So when I come off the stage, it's not it's not uncommon for me to have a line of people who want to talk to me. And if somebody gives me a buying signal, I say, would you like to schedule a time for us to chat about this further? Let's go ahead and get our calendars out right now, get it on our calendars. And then that way we can talk about this. And then I get my calendar out, we schedule a time, and then I can move on in the conversation to other people that are waiting. But if somebody's like, hey, Nikki, I just want to sign up. I want to be a part of your Sales Maven Society, for instance. I go, great. I can sign you up right now. Do you have a credit card?
Yeah. I love that.
I take payment like when I come off stage all the time. So you have to be ready. And people are often like, oh no, there's too many people waiting to talk to me. If they want to talk to you, they'll wait. Be succinct. Don't get into like, so tell me about your kids and, not all of that. Be succinct and be ready to get that next thing scheduled or take that next, take it to whatever that next thing. So that was a big answer, but
no, I love it. It helps. I mean, so that people again can see the map. And I think so much of this goes back to that information you provided about knowing your structure, like when you are selling and if you're speaking, you're selling, right?
Yes.
Having a plan beforehand so you know what you're going to do when people come up to you afterwards, right? And thinking that out so that you're not stuck there, taking too long or making decisions that you later regret if people are standing there giving you those buying signals. So no, I think that was a great answer. So for the folks that are still listening and are like, I want to connect with Nikki, I want to find out more about her work, how I could get inside her group or learn from her, where do you like to show up online?
The easiest way for us to connect is to allow for me to gift you one of my ebooks. It's called Closing the Sale. It's all about building confidence in the selling process. You can get that by going to my website, which is yoursalesmaven.com, and Maven is MAVEN.com, and then /grit. So this is specific for your listener to go to yoursalesmaven.com /grit, and then you'll get my ebook. We'll be connected. You'll be a part of the Sales Maven community. You'll get sales tips from me on a regular basis and all that good stuff. And if that's a little bit too much for you, I'm on LinkedIn, and you can also find me on Instagram. Those are kind of the places I hang out.
No worries. I'm glad you're a fan of LinkedIn. I'm there too, and I rave about it regularly. You can also find her link to her free gift as well as her social media links at the show notes page, which is legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Be sure to check that out. And I'm such a personal fan of Nikki. I mean, ever since I read your book and I was like, oh my gosh, everybody in this field needs this book, because I just feel like people miss those buying signals. They get sales wrong all the time unless they've really worked their way through, some expert content like what you put out. So if you're listening, jump on Nikki's list, get her free gift, check out her books. I'll share whatever she wants me to share, but check out the show notes, legalwebsitewarrior.com /podcast. Nikki, what final either takeaway or action step would you like people who are still listening to do today, this week?
The final thing is make sure that you have a clear invitation for people so they know what the next step is. So never, ever be afraid to invite somebody to the next step. Something simple like, is that something you'd like more information on? Or is that something we can schedule a call to talk about? Issue invitations every step of the way, and you'll find you'll close more business.
I love that. And I'm going to go back and put another plug in for your book, Buying Signals, because that came through loud and clear in that book, like how simple it is to provide that clarity if you've decided what you're going to say or what the invitation is. So that's awesome. Nikki, it's been so fun to see you again and connect with you today. I know we covered a lot of ground and there's still so much more we could cover, but maybe I could have you back another time to talk sales again on the podcast.
I love to talk sales. Thanks for having me. It was nice to see you.
Yes, you're so welcome. Well, take good care. Enjoy life in Boise, and we will connect again soon.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.